So included in non-insects are arachnids. So they include spiders, scorpions, ticks, mites, etc. What we're primarily working with here are mites when we're talking about plant pests. They have 2 body regions, cephalothorax and abdomen, 8 legs, no antennae. Mouthparts are chelicerae or modified appendages. And when we're talking about mites, they have stylets for piercing and sucking. And Eriophyid mites only have 2 legs. So some of the spider mites that you most commonly will find here in the Pacific Northwest are McDaniel mite, citrus red mite, spruce spider mite, and 2-spotted spider mite. Spider mites are the most serious pests in our area as far as mites go. So 2-spotted spider mites probably the most common you're going to see in landscape and gardens. And you can see there are 2 spots on the backs of these guys, and the picture above, that's the eggs. So this lovely shot includes the 2-spotted spider mite. You can see some cast skins and some eggs. Now, if you were going to run your hand across the bottom of this, it would feel like sand. It would be gritty. So when you do interior-scapes, these are very common. They cause stippling, yellow with brown or bronzed areas, and you can also lose the leaves. Webbing is there to protect them, and the plants may become so severely stunted they may die. So the adult is green with 2 spots on the back, and then it overwinters as this kind of orangey colored adult mite. So peak activity is in July and August, and each female can deposit about 100 eggs, and you can see a lot of eggs here. And the reason this is the deal, our peak activity is in July or August because they are really into very dry, dusty conditions, and that's what describes July and August in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, so the 2-spotted spider mite can have a life cycle of from 8 to 40 days, depending on temperatures. As I mentioned, huge pests in interior-scapes because they like hot, dry conditions. And when you think about plants that are in interior-scapes, they're tropical, so they're used to having a lot of humidity in the air. And when you're in an interior-scape, the air is so dry, especially in the wintertime, it can be as low as 10%. They would like it to be 85%. So here are some of the plants you might see: Aglaonema aspidistra, Dracaenas, especially Dracaena marginata, Schefflera arboricola, regular Schefflera, crotons, ficus, hibiscus, ferns, bamboo, and Neanthobella palms, and cactus. And you can see these guys just crawling across that webbing there. Okay, here's a close-up of the eggs and an adult. So, of course, the first thing of any management is going to be right plant, right place. You want to increase humidity, keep the plants moderately moist. And when we're talking about outside, you can hose off plants to decrease dusty conditions. And, of course, that's the way it is in the middle of the summer around here. But there's a lot of construction going on, especially now that construction is back, and your plants will need to be washed off. Decrease fertilization because they like the lush new growth that fertilizers push. You might want to remove the plants. And if you've got new house plants, quarantine them for a period of time. So you want to manage them without avoid using broad spectrum insecticides, because green lacewings and ladybird beetles can feed on them. And this is a spider mite destroyer you see here. It's a type of ladybird beetle. Insecticidal soap may provide some control. You want to hit it on the undersides of the leaves. You have to get the actual mite to be able to kill it. Several applications may be necessary, and in extreme cases you might have to resort to a miticide. Citrus red mite can appear any time of year and can cause complete defoliation of Skimmia and Choisya. The leaves will be white or yellow, mottled, and sometimes have some webbing. And here's a Skimmia. So if you're going to look on the underside, you probably will find an orange-red mite. They migrate from the soil to the leaves, and the peak infestation is in the fall. And that's making sense also because, you know, we've had hot, dry conditions throughout the summer. And if you took broadleaves, you know that this is so typical for Skimmia to have this damage, unfortunately, because it can be a beautiful plant. Here's another view of some of the damage you might see. So if you're going to fertilize, if you have to fertilize, use slow release. You can use lady beetles, lacewings, predaceous mites. Again, humidity is key. Predaceous mites want high humidity. So you need to wash your plants. You can buy predaceous mites. In a greenhouse situation, it may be okay, but they require super high humidity. So it's, you know, you got to think about if that's worth it. You wash them off. Sanitation is really important, and of course, avoiding broad spectrum pesticides. So gall mites or Eriophid mites, what happens is the mites cause abnormal tissue to grow in the plant's hairs and leaf cells. They form a pocket in this protective area. So sometimes you'll see this on grapes, and you might think when you look at it that it's some sort of fungal disease, but if you were to touch it, it's fuzzy. It's like hair. It's definitely a mite. And some people have already found this out there. Maple bladder gall mite feeds on the undersides of the leaves. It overwinters in cracks and under bark scales. They begin feeding in the spring. So the small depressions become red, and later in the seasons, the galls may turn green or black. Here's a close-up of one of these galls. So these little yellow maggot-looking things towards the top, those are the Eriophid mite. As I mentioned, they only have 2 legs. So mite activity typically stops by around July. They usually target silver and red maples, but they will target other things. It causes distortion, but it's really an aesthetic concern. It's not going to kill the plant, and there's really not much you can do about it as far as any sort of pesticides.